What's going on, fellow A-plussers, fellow Force users? It is I, your host, Adam Perez. We are back once again with a brand new live review and discussion for Skeleton Crew, episode number 6, as we are inching ever so closely to the season finale for this particular show. We're here to go ahead and break down all the pros, cons, everything that stood out to us this week. It is not just myself, as always. We got ourselves a little bit of a high council here, 3/4 of our crew certainly coming through on a brand new year for you guys. Happy New Year's, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for certainly joining us as we turn the page on 2024. We're here in 2025. I'm thankful I get the opportunity to spend it with you guys. So it's good to see you, Will. Good to see you, Crystal, as always. How's everybody's holiday been?
It's been good. Happy New Year to both of you and to our listeners. Happy 2025. It's I guess day 2 already, but it feels like it's already December. It's just been a lot. It's just been a lot in just 40 less than almost 48 hours now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We just
absolutely.
have to make it another 52 weeks.
Yeah.
We're almost there. We're almost there. I know we've already said this to each other, Will, but happy birthday. We
Yeah,
share the
happy
same
birthday.
birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you, Crystal, for the birthday wishes
Yeah.
earlier this week. Also, it was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Stuart was not able to join us today. He wasn't able to find anybody to have his shift, but that's certainly more than fine. We can definitely go ahead and carry the weight here for today's episode, as I think there's a lot to certainly talk about when it comes to episode number 6, and I'll be interested to kind of pick everybody's brains here. But look, guys, as we discuss this episode, again, these are simply just our A-plus opinions. We always want to go ahead and know yours. So as we discuss these topics, feel free to let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below after this video, and we'll definitely get into some discussion here. But episode 6, I don't remember the title. Zero Friends Again, I believe, is the title of this week's episode, as we pick up after the crazy cliffhanger that was episode 5. I am really curious to know your guys' thoughts on this. So ladies first, let's give our overall thoughts on this particular week's episode before we really dive in. Crystal, what you got for us? What'd you think about this week's?
All right. Well, I think I have to be a little bit of a downer again this week because for me, this episode was not really doing it for me. I feel like episode 6 out of 8 episodes, it really wasn't delivering plot or driving the story forward more. Like, I wish we had more of a little bit of everything in this episode. And I think that, I was on Twitter, so I saw everyone really hyping this episode up. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, that's it. But yeah, I think that it was fine. And I think that watching this episode, I had to like reevaluate like how maybe I'm interacting with the show or how I'm watching this show. And I think if I just go into it understanding that it's just a simple story, then maybe I won't want so much from it.
No, Crystal, don't do that. Don't reevaluate how you've been thinking about this show. Just enjoy it, girl. Just enjoy it. Oh man, that's so funny. This is like I feel like this is like a turnaround from last week's episode that we're talking
I
about here.
know. I'm interested to know what Will thinks though.
Yeah, I guess Will. Let me know
Yeah.
your thoughts, man. What did you think about episode number 6?
It was fine. I mean, it was a good episode. This was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. So
Yeah.
anytime she directs a Star Wars episode, it's going to have some emotional kicks to it, and I think she definitely handled it, especially given that every character at some point has had their own show or at one episode, and this was really this was the KB episode, and I think that we really got we got the backstory as far as why KB is augmented, and so I thought that was that part of the episode with the kids was great. I felt this week's episode did drag a bit with the Jod storyline, that just didn't. I mean, it was almost felt. I don't want to sound harsh, but I felt like it was filler, to be honest. Given that what we saw last week with the not so unexpected twist of him turning on the kids, and then we just sort of they do the little Goonies thing again and going down the shaft. But when we got to his part of the story, I just felt like it yeah, I was like Crystal, it didn't do anything. And I just don't see well, I'll stop there and we can get into a further discussion because I like to hear what your thoughts are, Adam.
Yeah.
Man.
Keep going, keep going.
Look, I will agree with you in the sense of, when it comes to Jod, based off of what we got last week, especially with him holding the lightsaber, right? Like, there was an element of like a big leap that I thought his character would take based off of just the cliffhanger alone. But what we got was kind of Jod sort of back to his own old self in the sense of like having to work his way out of the situation and save his hide as best as he can, right? Like he didn't necessarily take that next step of being the person to direct his own story, if that makes sense. He's now kind of being taken along for a ride, even though he did his best in here for his last appeal, if you will. I can understand how that might be a little bit underwhelming for sure. Guys, man, I gotta tell you, this I am so surprised, and I say that because based off of last week's episode, I felt like I was the downer. Like I felt like I came in with my low B score. Everyone was in high A's. I'm like, this week for sure, we're all gonna be on the same page, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I love this episode. I love this episode. This for me was one of my favorite episodes of the season. But look at, hey, if it wasn't feeling for you guys, look, I totally understand. Let me explain why I loved it. First off, Dallas Bryce Howard, I need this woman to get a Star Wars movie already. Like, I need her to direct something for me. I feel like every time that I've seen her in some level of Star Wars television show, I've really enjoyed a lot of her episodes. I think she does a really great job with her directing, her scene selections, her way that her performance, her actors really perform for her. Even love, like Will did say, a lot of the stuff that she does direct, I think, has some emotional bite to it. But I think even the final act of this showcases that she can do action pretty well. And for me, I think she has a really good balance and a grasp of what Star Wars could truly be. And when I think of her, I kind of want to see her take over a Star Wars movie. I know Dave Filoni's got a movie. Look, let Dave Filoni write, let Dallas direct, maybe even the Rey Skywalker movie. I would be completely okay if she went ahead and directed something like that for me too. But I thought she did a relatively good job. But for me, I thought the episode kind of hit on a little bit of everything for me. I thought the music was there. Really rousing music for me personally, get involved. Great focus on some of the character developments, I thought, when it comes to KB, Fern, especially their relationship in here too. And I thought it was actually kind of sweet in regards to KB and Wim sort of having their moment. Like, I kind of appreciated the idea that I'm trying to think of other episodes where they've switched off the character pairing. Like, I feel like we usually get Neil and Wim or KB and Fern together, but the idea that we had people on opposite sides going and interacting with other characters that we normally haven't seen that combination before, I thought really worked to the characters' benefit in regards to allowing us to have some really sort of emotional moments in here. Visually, I thought this was we talk a lot about the idea of how lived in this world feels like. This was another episode that felt that way to me. I thought the visuals were incredible. The usage of being able to blend the volume in with practical sets, the CGI I thought was pretty good, especially with the design of the brand new sort of ship that we have. And they even introduced some stop motion stuff in here too with the big crab, which I thought was really fascinating. A really great blend of kind of old school filmmaking and kind of modernized filmmaking too with stop motion. But to be able to kind of blend that all in together in one episode kind of really worked for me. And the final act of this, to me, I don't think I've ever been so emotionally connected to the kids as I was in this episode. The fact that they managed to get out of the situation that they were in. I mean, we talked a little bit about um, when they met Kim for the first time, right? And they had to escape from the X-wing, and you had somebody like Jod, put people in positions and stuff. I mean, the kids just jumped into action in here, and it felt like a really full-fledged crew. And so to kind of see them fit into their roles perfectly after being sort of challenged in regards to learning more about themselves in this episode, and then kind of coming together for what I thought was a really great reveal of the ship, their escape, great music to go along with it. It just felt like a really complete episode to me. I will agree in regards to if there was maybe a weak link to this episode, maybe it was Jod a little bit, but I kind of appreciated his appeal to the crew members in here. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but I can understand the underwhelmingness maybe for Jod's storyline in here. But for the most part, I had a really good time with this episode, man. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling about this week's episode. Am I crazy?
No. I mean, I even made it in my notes. I mean, whenever you were talking about the kids and the emotional elements of the episode, I mean, those really carried the day for me. I mean, when we give our grades, even though I was probably kind of maybe sounded lukewarm starting out, I did enjoy this episode. I really did. I think there was many of the things you discussed. The effects, the dramatic, the tension. I think, especially like with Win and KB, whenever he had, whenever they were going through trying to help her with her augmentations and all. I mean, that was, there was like edge of seats. And to your point, because of all the things, as I mentioned last week, I'm invested in these characters. So I think that's why the kid storyline this week really resonated with me. And I did like as you noted, Adam, them breaking off into different pairs to shift the dynamics of the episode. I thought really was very effective, especially, and they seem like real kids. I mean, kids have spats, but then, they get over it and move on. They're not like adults who hold grudges. So those are kind of things that I thought that were, really were effective in this episode.
Yeah, the ending especially kind of made me a little emotional of seeing KB and Fern come back together, when they apologize to each other and they're like, "You're my best friend." "No, you're my best friend." And they hug. There's a part of me that was like, "Oh, like I don't know, like it made me almost tear up a little bit. Like I was just like, "Oh, it is just the wholesome aspect of these kids." Like you said, well, I think beautifully, the idea that they don't hold grudges, like the fact that they recognize their faults and they're able to say sorry and really appreciate each other. Even Wim doing something as small as like, "Oh, that's dumb. You could hang out with me and Neil," right? Like just the offering of, it's just like the innocence of a child, I think really kind of shined through in this episode for me.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those things. Again, I really love how this show has all these little moments between all the kids that really make them feel real and like a real dynamic between all of them. And also, this is why I love talking to you guys, because we don't always agree or we don't always have the same opinions about something. So I think that is really interesting. Even though this episode wasn't my favorite, it's really great to hear what both of you think about why you liked it and what was working for you. Even if it doesn't work for me, it kind of helps me like look at it in another perspective or like reframe it, I guess.
Yeah. You're muted.
Thank you, Will. Sorry about that. Amateur over here. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Crystal. That's one of the reasons why I do love doing the show with you guys. I do love the fact that we have, because I get tired of just talking by myself when I do my review sometimes, and I do like having that back and forth to kind of see, because I think we said this before. There's plenty of times when we start out our overall thoughts, and then by the end of the episode, you're like, you know what, maybe I feel a little bit different, but it doesn't work like that all the time. But I do love the perspectives that we're able to provide for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy because I thought the stuff with Jod was my favorite, and then both of you are saying that is like the weakest part. So I just think that is interesting.
We'll definitely build upon it a little bit before we get into KB and Fern. I mean, let's talk about Jod, since he's kind of get brought up. We do get the opportunity to see Jod give his last appeal here. First off, I love seeing Homeboy come out of the cave like just glistening and bling. Like he's got chains for days, and I love that he's just reveling in all the treasure that he's found. But one of the things that did surprise me was that Jaleel White's character was still alive. Did that shock anybody else? I was under the impression that he died in the acid pit. But homeboy comes back and he just pops up out of nowhere. Did you guys expect him to come up, like to be there?
Yeah, because we didn't see them die. We just heard like them yelling, and so I was like, oh, they
Sure.
probably got out.
That's
Yeah,
true.
Urkel made it. You can't kill Stefan, but
You're right. It's
but
it's the old trope of if you don't see the body,
yeah,
there's a chance he
yeah,
could still be alive. So
yeah.
you're absolutely right there.
But part of the crew may have perished, but it was clearly suggested that some people did not make it out. But I can't see them. I guess this guy is his character is one of Brutus's top lieutenants, so he had to make it out.
Yeah, that's true. And I know you said this before, Crystal. I've seen a couple of your Twitter posts. I really love Brutus's design
Mhm.
as a character.
Yeah.
Every time I see him, I'm like, damn, that's so cool. Especially seeing him as the captain of the ship with that really cool like last appeal hourglass. I thought that was
Mhm.
a pretty neat design also. But let's talk about Crystal. Since you were a really big fan of the Jod stuff, what did you think about his appeal and what it brought to this scene, to this episode?
I really like this appeal because I think that this really highlights him as like a captain and why he was able to make it so far up in the ranks. I like that he was able to name some of his old crew by name and like have their stories ready. Like he really seems like a captain that cares about his crew and like diplomacy, which I thought was interesting. I also really liked this part of the story because I feel like it expanded on the story. It expanded on the universe. Like we got like a song, a shanty, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
We found out about like some of the glup shittos in the background, which I love. And we found out a little bit more about Jod, and so that's why I liked it. I feel like it really built upon the universe that we're given, and now we know that he's taking the pirates to Aten.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the term shanty. I didn't recognize what that what that was like. Oh, it's a cool pirate song. I'm like, I'm sure there's a name for it, but shanty, that's the word I was looking for. I dig it.
Yeah.
What'd you think, Will? What'd you think?
Yeah, now that Crystal talks about it, I mean, the things that she just highlighted were the parts of the Jod story, I guess the B story that did work for me, and I felt that I guess for me it was just I don't know if it was a pacing thing or maybe I just felt like it was given the short runtime of this episode, I felt like it was just really just felt rushed in some ways, as far as and maybe that was by design. I mean, sometimes you don't need to like expand things or drag things out. So I mean, that's one of the good things about Bryce Dallas Howard's direction. She always you know, does make a good efficient use of the space, the timing, the scene, set this everything else. So maybe that was just where I felt like I wanted more because I was just like, oh, we were back on the ship and they quickly resolved the whole appeal, and of course the last appeal thing kind of was just like, okay, this is a sort of a plot convenience. And I get that. I mean, they had to do it because obviously, if they like tossed them out of the airlock, then the show was going to, we, we wouldn't be, we would have more show to deal with. So maybe that was what was just sort of getting to me a little bit. Maybe I was just like, I got to remember this is just, this is a not kid show, but you're gonna have some built-in plot conveniences that are going to happen, and usually sometimes I just roll with it. And today, I guess I was just being a little bit more critical than I would normally be.
You know,
I would agree with you.
yeah, I do agree with aspects of that because it feels like John got the parent treatment in this episode where you get like one scene and then you never see him again for the rest of this episode. And so maybe it's like you said, maybe based off of how it left us last week's episode, you think he maybe deserved a little bit more of a chunk of this week's episode. So I can understand that for sure. But I do kind of there are aspects to what I would agree with you too, Crystal. Because there were aspects of this moment for him that I was a big fan of. I too even put in um my notes here that it found like he was trying to become a captain again. And there was something really cool about him being able to be very personable, I thought, with the crew members and stuff in order to kind of sway their minds and their decisions and whatnot. So I thought it was a really well crafted scene in regards to writing and just kind of a directing standpoint. And I didn't think about that before, Will, the idea of Dallas might just having just knowing how to really pace an episode well in the sense of getting people just the right amount of screen time that they need in order to kind of maybe push their story a little bit forward, if you will. But there was something cool about him seeing sort of recognizing his failings to his crew members, especially after what we saw in episode one. Him kind of relating to them in a sense like we're all living paycheck by paycheck. You know what I'm saying? Like we're barely scraping by in the sense. And I've got like one last opportunity to really make you guys a little bit more richer. So and again the shanty really worked for me. It felt like we were getting back into our pirate bag a little bit, you know, like everybody's singing on their ship type of thing. And this, I think, to me also, one, I think this sets up for a really interesting um coming together of the two crews now that we've got our skeleton crew working well together, and now you've got Captain Silvo or Jod together back with his pirate sort of thing. It seems like they're both headed to at Atten at this point, and it'll be interesting to kind of see how these two kind of come together. So I do think it's setting up for a really good kind of showdown, if you will. And even to build up on what your theory, Crystal, I swear I think every episode it continues to solidify this theory a little bit more when he's singing his shanty, and then at the end the last line is to at and he did plunder. And there, you know, something that always in my head, I think to myself, I like the term I've heard that, you know, sometimes myth and legends are based in reality or some, you know, aspects of reality. And if that's how the song ends to at and he did plunder, yeah, maybe he did make it to and maybe he is plundering. Maybe he's plundering as the supervisor and he's the one that's kind of controlling the situation here. So there's a part of me that thinks that this song is spot on. And he did make it to Atten and is enjoying the benefits. You know what I'm saying? So I think it solidifies it again, Crystal.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, of our conversations whenever when that song ended. So I did have a question though, given to your point, Adam, about the two crews. Now, because Smee is with Jod on, and they took his body and took, you know, and everything. So do the kid? I'm trying to remember. Do the kids know the course to Atten? Because I can't. Okay, I couldn't
Yeah,
remember that when I was watching it.
KB mentioned in a really quick sentence. She's just like, she's like, I got the coordinates, or I know the way home, sort of thing.
That's right. Okay.
And when was like, you remember it or something like that. So I'm assuming she saw it and visually she, you know, put it in her data
Okay.
banks or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember that, so I was wanted to see if I figured what you two guys would y'all would remember.
Yeah, no problem. That's yes, that we're for backup here, Will. We're for
Oh yeah.
backup
Oh yeah.
now. But let's talk a little bit about I don't know if there was anything else you guys want to mention about Jod in there. Did you have anything about your theory, Crystal? Are you starting to believe it even more now?
Well, I haven't gotten any hints, you know, so I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's a fun theory, but I wish there was like Easter eggs, or maybe there is and we just haven't picked up on them yet, you know? Maybe there
I
is
see what you mean.
foreshadowing that we just don't know about.
I get you. I get you. I do want to talk about KB and Fern here in this week's episode. Was there anything that stood out to you in particular, Will? I guess maybe talking a little bit about KB.
Yeah, I think this was the episode that we've all been wanting to have for some time, as far as KB and just find out. You know, we knew she was an augment. We didn't know why and how, but you know, clearly there was something that did happen in their past that um, led her to getting these augmentations done so that she could continue to survive. Clearly Fern had some. There was a mention of an accident, so and Fern must have been there. So what I really liked about the interactions between the two characters was, there was, KB was couldn't articulate what she was feeling because I guess, because of her disabilities or whatever. And then Fern, was like, this, you're my running, you're my partner, my running partner here. Why are you like, saying no whenever we want to climb? And then of course KB can't articulate why she doesn't want to climb, because she knew that her augs were starting to malfunction and turn on her, so she didn't want to be like stuck halfway up, and what happened. So so I thought that was a good, so I think the resolution of how they pair the kids off to, with Fern and Neil and Wynn and KB, to help them, get a new dynamic and be able to figure out how and why each of the characters were, had these feelings and emotions about various things, really worked to the benefit of the story, because it fleshed out these characters even more. And so when they did get reunited, it really did build a complete unit cohesion that we see at the end, especially when they were having to, get out of that garbage, that compactor that was about to eat up the ship.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I I I had something off the top of my head, and now I just completely lost it and blanked on me myself. I'm so sorry, Will. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you with what you said there. Anything in particular for you two, Crystal, for the KB stuff?
Yeah, just building off of what Will had said. I have people in my life that have chronic illness, and I feel like the way that they handled this episode was very like good, or it was very delicate, and it was done in a way that wasn't like shaming. And I think that it was a really good example on how to set boundaries and like why boundaries are important. I did think it was good to have Neil go with Fern rather than KB have that conversation with Fern.
Mm,
Because when Neil had told Fern, like, hey, not everyone can do everything like you, it's coming from another like able-bodied person. And I think that
Mhm.
that kind of makes Fern's wheels start to turn, or like it clicks for her. And I think that it would have been different if it was coming from KB. It might have been like a little bit shamey, or it might have been told to her instead of like Fern coming to that realization. Uh, and so I thought that that whole aspect of like disability or like chronic illness was handled really beautifully, especially with a kid show. So I don't want to say innocent, but it was just handled with a lot of nuance to it. It was very simple to understand, and it was very heartfelt, I would say. I did
Mhm.
like that Wynn stepped up. It makes me wonder if his mom also had a chronic illness and that's why she passed or something, because he seemed
ah,
very like aware of like what was going on with KB like right away. So I think that
uh-huh.
they handled this situation really well.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a great point you pointed out there. That didn't even cross my mind, but yeah, I thought they handled this with really delicate hands in a really, really great way. One of the things I do appreciate this too is, for me, when I look at this is almost like a opportunity for KB to gain her voice a little bit, the opportunity of being fearful to kind of speak up for yourself. And I feel like it's super relatable, not just for people with disabilities, but just people in general, like I feel like, especially for me sometimes, like I feel like I tend to be like a people pleaser, and it's one of those things where I don't want to necessarily let people down all the time. And so the opportunity of saying no or I can't do something is like almost not in my vocabulary, in a sense. You don't want to run somebody off or have them be upset with you, sort of thing, even though you're not capable of necessarily doing something. And I'm sure that's different, especially if you're truly disabled and you can't handle it, or you can't necessarily do that per se. But I do think for anybody in particular, I think this is a really great example of being able to have a voice and actually speak up for yourself. And I thought it was interesting that Fern in her own way kind of listened like, granted, Fern certainly can be stubborn. Like, I do wonder if Fern's a Capricorn for sure, because she is definitely stubborn, to certainly say the least. um but it is interesting, like when you get the KB moment and KB's trying to explain to Wim how she is, in the sense that um that she doesn't listen. That I don't want to say that she can be kind of cold, but she just kind of goes about her business, sort of thing. It is interesting to see that while KB feels that that's what Fern is like, Yeah, on the opposite side, we see Fern sort of learning the lesson in real time. The idea of what KB was so worried about after scolding Fern, in the sense of like, you never listen to anybody. Like you said, Crystal, she's really, things are turning in her head, and when she hears somebody like Neil say that, instead of shaming them, she actually does go out of her way to help them along the way, and even Neil recognizes that and thanks her, type of thing. So I thought that was really cool to kind of see both characters learn something about themselves, and at the end of the day, I think become stronger characters for it. And so yeah, I really enjoyed both their moments here in this week's episode for sure.
Yeah, when I was originally watching the show, I thought that it was going to be Wim and Neil having conflict, because I saw like Wim as more of like a selfish friend and Neil kind of just following him around. And I thought that would be the opportunity for Neil to like grow or get independence. So I think it's so interesting that it was the two girls. And I love how, as both of you said, you're my best friend, I'm your best friend. I thought that was really cute. And I think that this whole relationship dynamic was very unexpected.
Yeah, it definitely worked for me. And what's funny too is, despite the arguments, despite the stubbornness of Fern, she still tends to make the right decisions. Right? Like, the idea of climbing sounded like a really awful idea. You're going to break your bones on the way down. Like, it sounded like a really terrible decision. And they're like, "Oh, we'll see who gets to the ship first." Fern and Neil get to the ship. Fern is the one that saves them yet again. And Wim congratulates her and says, "You're amazing." Right? So it's like Fern continues to be truly the captain of this crew. Anytime that they're in terrible situations, she finds ways to make really good decisions, to get them out of it and to rescue them. And I think that continues to be apparent in here. And I actually love one of the lines from Women here when they get to the trash crab, and he says, "How come I'm always wrong about who's the good guy?" And it's like, yeah, that's this Wim, just gullible self, just his little naive self. But it, for me, it's just really cool to kind of see Fern once again kind of taking that role of, despite being stubborn, she tends to be right most of the time.
Yeah.
Capricorn. She's a Capricorn for sure.
Yeah, Capricorn for sure.
Yeah,
bro.
for sure. For sure.
For sure.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, for sure, man. But yeah, I enjoyed this episode for certainly what it was. But yeah, any pros or cons, anything in particular, anything else that happened in this episode that you guys want to further talk about? Was there any pros or cons that jumped out to you?
I have one.
What you
and
got?
this is
Pro
just a little nitpick. It's a con, so it's a dark side. The whole episode. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I'm just kidding. I like it. You know how when they they get rid of the brig, or they drop the brig? What do they call that?
The extra
they press
hull?
that button. Yes, the extra hull.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, the hull.
Yeah, the hull. Excuse me. But how Fern presses a button, I really felt like that should have been Wim to press the button, because in episode 1 or 2, he like really wanted to press it, and he kept pressing buttons. So I wanted him to be the one to do it, but
yeah, that would have been appropriate for sure.
Yeah, that would have been. I guess a pro for me was seeing the X-wings coming in again. Just as we talked about before, you can there's visual things you can do just to remind people that this is a Star Wars universe, and that was to me one of the a visual cue that was like, oh yeah, there was the lightsaber that we saw for like half a second whenever they tossed it off of Jod, but the X-wings coming in and reminding you you're in the New Republic era, and it was just again, as we talked about, this being lived in, but also just a visual cue for we're in Star Wars, and so I thought that was a real pro for me. And I guess the other pro was just whenever to Crystal, about your point about the. I agree with you with the con, because I was hoping it would be Win pushing that button as well. But whenever the other pro was just whenever the extra hull was like breaking off. It was reminding me of like we got in Solo, when when the Millennium Falcon still had the escape pod at the front, and then they jettisoned it out so that we could see how the ship, now how we all know how the ship looks. That was also a nice little cool thing too. It's just like, basically, they had this extra bulk on this ship just to, like, for whatever reason, and then they pull it off, and now we got a sleeker starship that these kids can, like, go off and return home, or go on their next adventure. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I thought what I was trying to think too, like why they would have an extra hull. And for me, I was thinking to myself, like, well, maybe that was like Tack Renard's way of disguising his ship
Yeah.
or something like that. Maybe he didn't
Mhm.
want his ship to be noticed at times. So
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking. But I love the design. I love that whole sequence of them trying to get out. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Crystal. It should have been Wim to push that button for sure. And just to jump on board, Will, what you, because that was in one of my pros in here, just to kind of go back on Dallas Bryce Howard's directing. When the X-wings come in, there's a great sort of circular pan of of um, um, the Steve Urkel pirate guy, Jaleel White's pirate,
Yeah.
as the X-wings are coming around and swooping around him, and he's like looking around and stuff. I just thought, like, visually it was really cool, sort of tracking shot, circular tracking shot, to see the
Yeah.
X-wings in there. I thought it was a really cool shot. If I have to throw in two things, I will go ahead and throw in for pros. I thought the trash crabs were a really cool design. The idea of them being sort of like hermit crabs, but like with trash. I thought that was actually pretty cool, and the notion of them using some stop motion really worked for me. And then secondly, I'm a musical composer type of guy. I love music, and for me at least, the music really worked in this episode. And I was thinking to myself, who composed this episode? And it's a gentleman by the name of Mick
Mhm.
Giacchino.
Yep.
And I was like, Mick Giacchino, I wonder if he's related to Michael
He is.
Giacchino. And that's his son. I
Yep.
was like, oh
Yep.
my God, it runs in the family. Michael Giacchino is like one of my favorite composers right
Yeah.
now. And Mick also did the score for The Penguin, which I didn't
Penguin. Yep.
realize also.
Yep.
I was like, damn, the man is just like knocking it out of the park. So
Yeah.
Mick Giacchino really stood out to me as the composer for this week's episode. It just had really great Star Wars elements to it. I thought really worked for me.
Yeah. Whenever I saw that the Gianninos were doing the score for this show, I was like, okay, yeah, we're in for a treat.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself, like, I wonder if he scored every episode. So I'm glad that he has, but I for some reason it took me until this episode to actually look it up. But yeah, I was kind of blown away by his work so far.
Nice.
But any last before we go into grading, any last things that we didn't talk about that you guys want to talk about?
No, I pretty much shared my cons earlier, so I don't have any others. Any other nitpicks?
No parents in this episode. So maybe that's a good thing. We'll see. I'm kind of curious as to what the next two episodes are going to be like. Penultimate and then the finale. If anything, I am curious if they would be so bold as to have them get back to Atten in this next week's episode and see how that transpires over two episodes worth. Do you think they get back to Atten? Like, do you think this is the point where we got the coordinates, both crews do? Is next week's episode the return to Atten, you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We may get there might be a little sidebar adventure, but narratively, the way this show has progressed, I don't think they'll stress. I think you guys are right. I mean, either they'll get to it halfway through the episode, or at the end at a cliffhanger where they end up and then the finale will take place on that planet.
I can see that too. I really want Kim to return. but I don't see where she pops back up in here. Maybe it is a quick side mission for to get her, and then they go back. I really don't know. I can kind of see it going either way though. Will, like you said, either getting to it and halfway through, like some character exposition for a little bit, and then they get there halfway, or cliffhanger wise. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how the last two episodes go. But are you guys excited for them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
This has been a good series to watch, and got me back into Star Wars again because I was feeling kind of let down after the Acolyte, to be honest.
I
Yeah.
feel you.
I'm right there with you. You guys think that we'll get the redemption of Captain Silvo in this next episode, or Jod, or do you think it'll be the last episode?
Mm.
I'm betting on last episode. I think maybe hints of maybe he's got a plan or something. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I think like maybe they bump into the kids and he doesn't want them to like be captured by the pirates or be killed by the pirates, so he does something to kind of save them without them necessarily knowing. You know what I mean? And they maybe are reuniting with the kids in the finale or something like that. I don't know. That's where I'm leaning.
Yeah, I can see that too. I can see that coming as well.
Shout out Scarif. Good to see you in here, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate you certainly coming through. But I think it is that time of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Report card time. This should be an interesting segment, to say the least. Guys, if you had to take your report card home to your family, showcase that grade for episode 6. Look, Mom, look what they gave Skeleton Crew, episode 6. Guys, what would you grade it? Crystal, ladies first. Miss Debbie Downer today. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
know. I know. I think I'm gonna give it an 83.
83. So you're sitting
Would
at
have been lower.
a B.
Yeah. I think it would have been lower if we had not had this conversation.
Okay. Okay. So we swayed you a little bit. All right. I'll take that. A B for 83 here for episode 6 for Crystal. Will, what about you?
I'm going to give it a B plus.
Hey.
Yeah. I came in with the thought of a B plus, and I'm leaving with a B plus. But I will have to say I'll give it an 88.
Ooh.
Whoa.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah,
Got
yeah. It would have been 86, but our conversation bumped it up to 88. So, but yeah, it's always going to be a B plus.
guys, you know, I really love this episode. I came in here today with an idea of what I was going to give it, and I think I'm going to stick with it. I'm deciding if I should actually bump my grade down a little bit because now I feel like I'm too spicy. But I really love this episode. Like, I really did. I don't think I had a single con about this episode, with the exception of like the runtime. But the one thing that I loved about the runtime is that despite it, like you mentioned, Will, Dallas Bryce Howard just has a way of navigating just the amount of what to put in an episode that for me, I thought had a really great beginning, chill middle that gave us some great character growth, and an amazing sort of final act in here. So if I had to give it a grade, I think I'm going to give it a 96, y'all. I think I'm going to give it an A plus for me. I think I'm going to give it. To be fair, to be fair, I was going to come up here with a 98, but I'm going to give it a 96 because maybe more Jod would have been pretty cool. So I'll give it a 96. I'm being spicy today. Divide that by 3, we got ourselves an 89. Damn it, Adam. We got a B plus, y'all. If I stuck at my 98, this episode might have gotten an A. I'm so sorry, Skeleton Crew.
Hey, but at the end of the day, I mean, this series, as I've noted before, it's consistent. I mean, it's consistently delivering solid episodes each week, and I haven't walked away from an episode where I was just like, man, that was a waste of a half an hour or 45 minutes. So that so if they can keep this up for the next two episodes, then hey, I consider it a successful season for me.
Man,
Yeah,
I'm so
same.
sorry. I feel so bad. I feel like I want to change my grade now.
If you're gonna change your grade, I'm gonna change my grade from 2 weeks ago.
no, final decision. Final
Yeah.
decisions.
But I agree with Will. Like, even though this episode was like a little bit lower for me, all in all, it's still a good episode. Like, we're not like at a C or a D here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, across the board. I mean, I feel like sometimes I don't want to say nitpicking, but if we're literally giving a show a B, it's like it's a good episode, y'all. Like, still
Right.
enjoy it for what it is. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
And I feel like we have there's like a learning curve also. It's like the episodes have been so good that it's like I have to hold these other episodes to that standard for myself, So
Yeah.
all in all, they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I only gave one other episode an A+. I think that might have been like episode 3 or something like that, like a David Lowry episode or something. I've been handing out A's a lot in this series, so maybe I'm being a little too spicy, but we'll see how it goes. We got two more episodes to go, but that will be a B+, 89 for this week. So far we got a B+, A, B+, A-, and a B+. 6 episodes in. We'll see if how much stronger this show can conclude. But let's do a roundtable announcement here. Crystal, if people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube. I make Star Wars videos and I do my makeup at the same time. Just type in Crystal Kyber. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter.
Excellent. Always great having you, Crystal, as always. Will, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on social media. My personal socials is at Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK. That's my handle on all the platforms. Our show handle is at Scene a Nerd on Twitter and on BlueSky, and then on Instagram and Threads, it's at Scene_N_Nerd. We'll be back next week with our first episode of 2025. We're planning on talking about what if season 3 and what we're looking forward to in 2025.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Yeah, we just dropped the top 5 most anticipated movies for 2025 on our channel. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so as of yet, along with that bell notification. So anytime we drop videos, you can be notified. You can find us anywhere at APlus Opinions up here or down here on social media. We're also on TikTok at Hero Report and BlueSky at heroreport.bsky.social. But yeah, guys, we will certainly be back next weekend. Hopefully we get the whole crew here for the last 2 episodes. We'll see what everybody's schedule is like. I actually may be out of town for the finale on the 15th. I'm traveling to Georgia, but my mom does have a laptop and a camera set up, so
There you go.
maybe I will try.
Here we are.
Yeah, I will try and make it for that Wednesday night live. If for some reason not, then definitely Thursday. Well, I'll definitely try for Wednesday for sure to make sure that we knock this out of the park. But 2 weeks left, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know your thoughts on this week's episode in the comment section box below. But that will certainly do it for us. Until next time, do us a big favor, as always. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the force be with you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.